Hello, it's Richard at Richard's Guitars. Hope you're well. Today we are going to be doing some chord work and delving into chords. This lesson will suit people who've been playing for years and years and years as much as it will suit somebody who is literally starting for the very first time. And today we're going to be expanding on that knowledge of the major scale in the first position. I don't like calling it the first position, by the way. I don't like calling anything positions because I think that throws people off. But it just so happens to be the position that people learn generally the first time. And the problem with shapes and the problem with calling things position one is that people tend to learn something very cut off from everything else. And I feel that that's the most damaging thing you can do. So for example, we're going to be doing chords today. And one of the chords we're going to look at is technically a C major chord. And this fingering down here is what you may be used to seeing. If you've been playing a while or if you're just starting out, one of the first chords you see will be the C major chord. Now that chord you might also see in its absolutely simplistic form with your first finger at the first fret on the B string and just playing the top three strings. As you get a little bit better, your fingers get used to going across and playing that. Now I'm going to put the chord diagrams up so you'll see what that is. But I'm not here to show you that chord, even though that is basically the first thing you normally see when you're learning your first chord. The problem with learning that chord is you tend to think that's your C major chord. That is the C major chord. And what if I tell you that by taking the finger off here, it becomes C major 7th? It starts to sound a little bit complicated maybe, or a little bit, not necessarily complicated, but you go, oh, okay, that's C major 7th. Sounds lovely, but we don't really connect it with anything at all. Now that's the trouble, that's the danger of learning what I call parrot fashion. So today, we're going to learn it the proper way. And I'm really excited about showing this because you're just going to look at this and go, oh my god. This is what I'm hoping anyway, if we focus and do it properly. So I'm going to try not to waffle. Now, diagram that will be up here, I'm looking at a copy of it down here to make sure that I don't say anything out of context for you. But you should be looking at the diagram that I'm looking at, and that is basically our major scale, but showing the intervals from the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. We call the 3 a major third, and we call the 7 a major 7, big M7. Now, this is the bit that we need to get our head round. This is the first little building block we need to understand. As you look at that diagram, and as we learn our very first chord, you need to learn this basic principle. Every chord that you ever play in what we call one key, and the key is really if you want to think of it as a collective of notes that all sound and work well together, that we're used to hearing. When you hear a pop song or a song in the Western world, we will hear it in a certain key. We'll tend to. It'll generally be in one key. Can change, but that's another subject. But generally we hear a collection of notes that work well together. That is the major scale. The major scale is what brings those notes together, those 7 notes that we've talked about before. Okay. The way in which we create the chords that are going to work in that key is as follows. You take the very first note of the scale, in this case, with what the example I've been showing you consistently in the last couple of lessons, it's a C. Okay? We know it's the major scale, and what we do is we build 3, to start with 3, but we're going to do 4. We're going to do 4 notes, okay? And we're going to skip every other note, and there's a phrase that sounds a bit complicated, but it's not in any way at all. We call it stacking the thirds, okay? Stacking thirds. It's called stacking thirds because we're missing every other note. So if you imagine the first note, miss out the second note, so we go straight to the third. So that distance is a third. And we know from learning from the first lesson even, that distance will either be a major third or it'll be a minor third. Okay? A major third will go over 4 frets, A minor third will be three frets away. If you don't know the difference between a minor third and a major third, go to lesson 1 and you'll see the distance that we did the major third. Now I've caught myself out there. I only show you the major third because I'm doing the major scale. So just simply remember that one below a major third is the minor third. So we haven't discussed that before, so I'm introducing it to you now. Very simple, nothing complicated. I haven't confused you, trust me. What we're doing is we're skipping from the root going up to the third. In this case it's going to be a major third, which we'll see in the diagram. But if that was 3 frets down instead of 4 frets, it would have been a minor third. Now the difference between a major third and a minor third, and again I don't expect you to be able to play this right now, but it's the difference between happy and sad. A chord that sounds happy tends to be the major, sounds to sound majory, minory. That is literally the only difference between that chord, I just played an A major chord, and then to an A minor chord, is the minor third, okay? And this is the kind of thing we're going to learn about, and this is the kind of thing we're going to show you in these videos. But all I'm telling you right now is that to create a chord, we need the root, skip over the root to the third, and if you look at the diagram, you'll see all the purple colours, they are the skipped notes, okay? So we can see a root, we can see the major third, so we know the chord's a major chord, and we see the fifth. All chords in the major scale tend to have a fifth. Okay, there's a common denominator, common theme. There is one chord in the key that we play that has a flat fifth, and we're not going to worry about that now. So don't confuse yourself with saying, oh God, well, what was that one that he... Don't even worry about it right now, because the majority of the time you're never going to need to use it, you're never going to see it until you progress to a certain level, and then you might start to find an interest in it. But right now, in terms of all the music you ever hear, we don't even need to worry about it. So for now, we can say chords have a common denominator. It's the fifth. They nearly always have a fifth, which is consistent. So the fifth, the interval of a fifth, can't change, because we said from the first video that the interval of a fifth, do it in the key of C, root to 5, a fifth is kind of fills out the root. So if you put your first finger on the 8th fret of the E, and then you put your third finger on the 10th fret of the A, and just play that down, that's called a 5 chord, and that is used in rock guitar all the time. So if I put my overdrive on, put a bit of that, I've got a bit of that on. It's used the basis of rock and roll. So the root and fifth, it's used all the time. Okay, so that's a really important little chord of its own right. Root and 5. So that would be called a C5. In this case, because the root is on the C, we put our third finger on the fifth, and believe it or not, that is a 5 chord. That's a C5. Okay, so what we're going to do then, as I said, is we're going to build up a root, a third, then up to the fifth, because we miss out the 4. You with me? So we're skipping every other interval. Every chord that we're going to play in the future is going to be built in the same way. Root, 3, 5, and in this case today we're going to do the 7. The reason I'm going to show you the 7 is because the 7 is also fundamentally important in understanding your future, or expanding your future knowledge. By learning it now, we are going to remove a lot of confusion in the future. So yeah, don't worry about the fact I'm going to show you a C major 7th. So what technically I'm showing you is the one chord, the chord built off the root note of the scale, and it happens to be major 7th. And the reason why we know it's major 7th, if you look down at your diagram, what makes, and I'll put the notes up on the screen, what makes a major 7th chord a major 7th and not a dominant 7th or a minor 7th is the availability or the abundance of a major 3rd and a major 7th. So we know it's got a root, We know it's got a fifth, we've already talked about that. So the chord's got a root, we know the chord's got a fifth. Is the chord major or minor? That's the first thing. Okay, if it's a major chord and it has a major seventh interval in it, that chord is a major seventh chord. It consists of a root, a major third, a fifth, a major seventh. Where you go. So the next thing is, we're going to make up our own chord here using this scale pattern. We're going to literally create, go, okay Rich, prove to me that this is a major seventh. We are just going to make up our own chord. Literally whatever you want to create on here, you can create. As long as you've got a seventh, a fifth, a third, and a root. And I'm going to talk you through it, and we're going to have a bit of fun with it. Okay, and I literally don't know where I'm going here. So, but this is the fun. I know it's going to, actually, because I know it works, I know it's going to work. I know this is going to go somewhere. Right, now then, first thing I'd suggest you do is memorize that little map of intervals. So important. This is a crucial thing to do, because I've already possibly highlighted in another video that the sooner you can relate to where intervals are from the root, so you know your third is there, you know your fifth is there, major. So let's go through it. So root, exactly the same fingering pattern that you would have played with the scale that we did in the last lesson. So start on the second finger. Now, we're not going to go to the second because we don't want that, it's not part of the chord. Now we're going to put our first finger on the major third. Okay? And so the first finger on the 7th fret, little finger on the 10th fret of the A string. So that is literally, okay? Now then, those three notes are root, 3, 5. Now we're going to finish on the 7, the major 7. So if you look down at your diagram, or up at the screen, you'll see that if I put my third finger on the D string, with 9th fret, that's going to find you the major 7th of the chord. So what we have now is now this is what we call an arpeggio. So if you've heard of arpeggios, but you didn't know their connection to chords, however unlikely that is, you might be someone who hasn't been shown it and slapped the wrist of the teacher that showed you a chord without telling you what an arpeggio is, because they're fundamentally the same thing. They're from the same place. They are the same thing. They're just a bunch of notes that harmonically sound nice together, that are built from stacked thirds from the root. Does that sound complicated? I hope that should sound relatively straightforward now. We're simply building notes from the root, going up a third each time from the scale. So as long as you know your scale, you can pull out the chord tones. So root, 3, 5, major 7th. But for now, I just want you to practice enjoying playing chord tones and finding your way to those notes and feeling comfortable using your fingers in the right place. There, I'm going down to the main. Now let's carry on up, because what I want you to do is to be able to carry on up. So from the major 7th, so you got on the 9th fret on the D string, we've got the major 7th. Now we go to root with that little pinky, major 3rd, okay, 5th, major 7th, and root again. So by looking at the diagram and hearing what I'm doing there, nothing changes. Nothing changes from what I've shown you before. Major scale. Every time I do that when I'm talking to you, it's interesting. I did that in the last video. Coming back down, I missed the note. I don't know why I do that. So it's because I'm not very good. So hopefully what you're seeing here is, what's more important is you remember the rules of how to build chords. Chords are built from the notes of the scale. Right now we're building the chord that starts from the first note of the major scale. What will become clearer is in the second lesson we're going to do the second note of the scale, and after you've done 2 it kind of penny drops and you really start to get it. We're going to use exactly the same framework, and we're going to change all the intervals around to start from the second note of the scale. Trust me. Please trust me. just do what I'm showing you. Quite often a lot of complications and a lot of confusion can arise from overthinking. As long as you can understand what I'm showing you, not what you think that might lead to or what that might mean, think about what I'm showing you. The fundamentals of what we're doing today is, do you know your major scale? Right, yes, okay. Do you know how to build a chord? Right, if you're confused about that, it's root, 3, 5, and in this case it's 7, because we're making a 7th chord. If you look at your chord books, it's full of them. Major 7ths, minor 7ths, dominant 7ths. That's what we're teaching today, the concept of a 7th chord. So it's built for the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th. Next thing we learned, chords are always major or minor, as a rule. And that is because of the 3rd. Major 3rd or a minor 3rd. If it's got a minor 3rd, it's a minor chord. Simple as that, right? All chords have a 5th, as a rule. They nearly all have a 5th. We know that the 5th kind of backs up the root. Sounds cool, doesn't really flavour the chord much, it's just a filler tone, okay? It works, it's there. What makes your chord a major 7th chord is the 7th added on the top, because it's a major 7th. So I'm going to now pick apart this chord that we've now haven't really shown you, have we? Haven't really done a chord. I've shown you the building blocks of a chord. So I wanted to have a bit of fun here. Now, I know that there's going to be people with really very basic levels of playing here, and so what I want to do is, I've talked about the importance of my jam pal before, so it's called a jam pal. So it's a tiny little device that enables me to record something and it plays it back to you over and over again. If you don't know what it is, go to my, if you just do a search on my YouTube page, Jam Pal, you'll see the instructions of it being used, and if you go to my website, arguitars.co.uk, you'll see it for sale. You'll see what it is. It's £59. You don't have to buy one from me, but obviously I'd love you to. It's my little product that I sell, and I just think it's a really, really important product that every beginner should have one, basically. And I talk about why in another video. Now, so what I'm going to do here, because this helps you, this is why you need one, because I'm going to show you now how to entertain yourself and to be excited about musicality, even on the most basic skill levels, okay? So I'm going to record, I'll take the delay off, maybe, to begin with. I'm just going to create this basic rhythm, and it's kind of tapping out 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is now repeating that first note. It's a C in this case, okay? I've just simply played one note of each of my chord tones there. A root, a major 3rd, a 5th, and a major 7th. Now that chord kind of sounds a little bit stodgy. It sounds a little bit stodgy, but that's a major 7th chord. It sounds a little bit stodgy because all the chord tones are actually collectively all within the first octave. So let's whack in something that makes it sound a little bit more open. I'm going to see what that major 7th sounds like at the top there. I'm going to pull that one out. So at the top, what I mean by that is it'll be the 7th fret on the top E string. I've got the wrong bar. Oh! Not sure. For the sake of the video, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to make that. Trust me. Now then, I'm hoping you'd agree that sounds absolutely lovely. Let me just give you an example now. So what I did there was I just played the major seventh, fifth, major third, and then I filled in with a major seventh to the root to the major seventh. Even if you don't have the technical expertise to whack out chords yet, full big, look at that, it all looks complicated. You don't need that right now if you're at that total beginner level. If you get yourself a jam pal, I know I'm promoting my product, but if you get yourself a looper, I don't like using that word because it sounds complicated. It's just a pal. It's somebody to play with, someone to help you stay in time, help inspire you. That's the way I look at it, so I call it jam pal. So just need that kind of support. Or multiple friends who can play notes at the same time, but really what you want to be able to do is do it yourself. And what you're doing by playing these notes, even though you're playing them separately, you are forming chords. This is a major seventh chord. Amazing. That's a major seventh chord. Albeit played with notes played independently, it doesn't matter. You know, this is just part of how we're learning the chord shape. Backing for some Liga. So I hope you enjoyed that, and it's been really fun having you along and teaching. Like, it's great, 25 years since I've done this sort of thing, so I'm really enjoying it. So I'm hoping you're getting something out of it, and making you look at music and playing guitar in a different way too. Maybe some are taught it. So okay, right, well, thanks very much. See you soon. See you for the next one. Bye bye.